Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara. We talk about TV shows here. The year is 2021 and the name of the show is Babylon 5. This is season 3, episode 4. It's called Passing Through Gethsemane, if I'm pronouncing that right. I've never heard of this before, this episode. I had to Google it. So it's something about the Garden of Gethsemane. It's religious, which is, makes sense in the context of the episode, but yes, I don't know how to pronounce it.
They talk about what it is in the episode, but that's okay.
Well, they did, but it's there's a lot to take in. I was too busy thinking about why Chucky was in the episode. So yes, full spoilers for the episode, as per usual. This one has a very interesting premise, which is that the monks that arrived back a couple of episodes ago on the station, we see a little bit more of them, particularly the leader and another character played by Brad Dourif, who of course is very famous for voicing Chucky in the Child's Play and Chucky movies. But he's popped up in a bunch of things. I'm sure Tara's about to tell us how he was in a Star Trek episode at some point.
Oh, he's in a couple. Yeah, he has a very short recurring role in Voyager, where he plays the same character.
The same character. That's rare for Star Trek, to be honest. The guest stars.
Like he plays the same character as this show.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, fair enough.
Also, the same character in Chucky.
Well, that's what I was actually kind of laughing about. Is that so he's credited here as Brother Edward on IMDb, but his name that we sort of learn is Charles, and that made me laugh because in Chucky's the name of the doll. That's not the murderer whose soul went into the doll. That's not his name. His name was Charles Lee Ray. So, given what this episode reveals about this character, I actually thought it was like almost maybe an intentional.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like
well,
an intentional.
Chuck is like a nickname for Charles.
Oh yeah, sure, and that was obviously like obviously not an accident, but it was like a happy accident in the context of the movie that the doll's name was like a variant of Charles, but yeah, but the actual character's name was Charles Lee Ray. So it's a whole thing. So that's the thing. I love the premise of this episode. I love the concept of this episode, but I have a few problems with the execution. No pun intended, given that subject's going to come up. How did you feel about this one?
I like it. I especially like the end of it, and because of the like religious themes in the episode, I like how it ends a lot. But yeah, I love Brad Dourif. He's so fun, and he's really good in this. I mean, he always plays the same character, I guess, so he's good at it. Obviously Lita's back as well, so that sort of plays into things. Yeah, her stuff is interesting too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, of course. The main thing, though, of course, is that we have these monks, and Brad Dourif's character starts to like see things, and there was actually, they did present me with a kind of a red herring, actually, which I thought was kind of neat. In that, because they have a moment where Lita runs into Londo, and we'll talk about that scene separately, but there's kind of a threat she makes during that scene, which I thought was actually setting up what was maybe happening to Brad Dourif's character for a very brief moment in time. Of course,
me too, actually.
But my biggest complaint of this episode is actually that they felt the need to remind us of something that's already been set up in the world, because it made what was going on a little too obvious before it was revealed. And that I felt frustrated by that, because I get thematically why there's a scene where Garibaldi's watching the news and there's this guy who's been caught, this murderer, and he's like explaining this, mind-wiping punishment versus the death penalty to Delenn. And it's an interesting enough scene on its own, because Delenn's kind of, obviously she doesn't seem very game for this, clearly thinks it's a little bit savage and is wondering why Garibaldi's all for it. But because it reminds you of this thing that they do, which was set up last season, or maybe it was even season 1, but it was set up. I
want to say season 1, yeah.
Where a murderer, instead of the death penalty, will have their mind wiped completely, and a new personality will be put in, and they'll be basically just sent somewhere where they can serve community and serve, you know, the betterment of people and just be like a nice person. And it's seen as like a humane way to go. And, you know, we talked a little bit about the morals of that and how ethical is this. And obviously there was a debate in that episode. But because they feel the need to remind us this year, all I could think is, as like Brad Dourif was seeing more things, and he was getting these flashbacks like a dead woman with the black rose in her mouth, and he was seeing the writing and blood on the wall, all I could think was, okay, I've just realised what this is because of the scene that you reintroduced this idea in. But my main thought was, this would have been way cooler if you didn't do that. See if I was like...
It has been a long time since, you know, they explained what happened, so I didn't remember it until Garibaldi brought it up, and then I was like, oh yeah, I remember now. But if the reveal happened, I probably would have had that same revelation.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that all I could think was, I wish you hadn't done this, because I would be sitting going, oh, what's going on with this guy? You'd spend the whole episode like, why is he having these flashes? What does it mean? What's going on? And like I said, you maybe set up the idea that maybe a telepath's like planting things in his head and it's not really there, because that's kind of implied as a little bit at one point. But yeah, like the reveal of what it is would have made me remember when they set it up, and it would have felt like a cool, like, oh my god, they brought this back in a really cool way, where someone's going through these weird memories that they don't know why they've got them, like they don't remember this happening, but they're having these weird flashes, and it turns out, oh, they were a serial killer who had their mind wiped and they're now getting the memories. And it lets us approach this from another ethical side, where, okay, now we get to see the effect of when this doesn't go right. Now, admittedly, it doesn't happen naturally. There is a telepath who intentionally unlocks these memories. It's not something that seems to just be able to happen, as far as we know yet. It's
yeah, but that would be cool though, right? If somebody had their mind wiped completely to where they became an ethical person, and then all of a sudden starts having these thoughts of being a serial killer again. Like maybe that side of them is just too strong that it starts to come back, or it's just like, maybe it's like a nature versus nurture thing, where like they were always going to become a serial killer, and even if you wipe them clean, like that part of them is still there.
Yeah, no, I like all of that, but I think just in the context of this episode, though, that's not what happened. What happened is that a telepath unlocked what it was, but obviously there's a lot of potential in that story for those reasons that you just gave. But there's a lot of things to explore with, you know, can that come through again? And then in the case of this, I get there's a lot of interesting things to explore. This idea that because when he does kind of like learn enough that he effectively Googles like the details, although the computer's really shit and tells him it'll take 4 hours to like search for
I know
Black Rose
4
murder.
hours. Just type the keywords into Google, it'll happen right away.
I mean, I think because they say cross-reference, and I know people in the comments are going to, like, I know Google didn't exist when this was made. We're just cracking the joke, but it's just absurd. Like, because they say that I'll cross-reference all these different elements, and I'm like, but today, literally right now, if we just typed into Google, murder, Black Rose, and then whatever the other detail was, Google would present us with all the news articles that would be related to it. Like, we'd just get them instantly. So it was a really funny moment where I'm like, 4 hours. How are you getting the results? Carrier pigeon? Through space?
Yeah. This Babylon internet. What? Babnet.
Babcom. Well, Babcom is a telephone
is
system.
their communications, but maybe that's also their internet. Babnet.
But anyway, the point I'm getting at is when he Googles this effectively and he finds out, there was a moment when the head monk goes to see him, and he's like, there's like a sort of really cinematic moment where he's like behind this grating, so he's sort of like only got these like sort of like diamonds of light hitting him through the shadows of the grating on this wall. And I thought, oh, is he just going to be evil or sinister now? And I actually really appreciated that he's not. This is a really interesting thing to explore, is that he knows who he was before, and he's obviously had a couple of these little flashes to like sort of have glimpses, but he's not just reverted to his personality that he was then. He's still this religious person that he is now, who is horrified by what he used to be, and it makes him question a lot of his faith, because he's like, well, like, can I be forgiven for these sins? Because
if I don't know about them, then how can I ask for forgiveness, kind of a thing. Yeah, there's a lot of ethical questions that come up. I mean, we already had them from the beginning when this idea of mind wiping first came up. and how ethical is that really? But then this one brings up a lot more of the issues because, I mean, first of all, I never really trusted him because you cast Brad Dourif if you want to cast a crazy serial killer.
Yeah, I don't trust Brad Dourif for the best of times. Not the real man. I just mean his characters tend to.
I don't know. I've never met him, but like, if you told me that if there's a news story tomorrow that he had like 10 bodies buried in his basement, I might be like, yeah, okay, I see it.
Yeah, that adds up. Adds up. But this is the thing. I was like, I just wish we didn't have that Garibaldi scene where they reintroduced this before they go down this path, because I think the plot would have felt way cooler. And it would have been a really cool moment when the idea was brought up, because it's not that long after I think we both figured it out, where it goes to a scene where the head monk speaks to Sheridan and says, "Hey, I think he might be this, and this is maybe what's happening to him right now." Like, it's not actually that long after, but see if it had waited till that scene and then he said this, and then it dawned on us, oh wait, he used to be a serial killer, and we saw an example of this happening like ages ago. That would have been a cool like bringing back, and this show's done a lot of cool like things like that where it's brought back something from a previous episode that was well ago. And I think for whatever reason, this one they felt the need, or maybe the network asked them to, I don't know, but for whatever reason it was like, or even if just this scene with Garibaldi and Delenn was like an episode ago and not this one, I think that would have done a lot. I think it being in the same episode made it feel just a little bit too choreographed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would have liked to have had the big reveal of, but instead it was just so obvious from the beginning what was happening to him. I mean, the whole telepath thing I didn't know about. I did also think that, it's Lita, because she's the one who she says that like she's not following the rules anymore. She's had this moment of enlightenment. Yeah,
she's not psycho anymore, and that's obviously another thing that he gets into. There's some other religious stuff, of course. He has a conversation, Brad Dourif, that is, with Delenn, where he's trying to just understand the religion of the Minbari. There's some interesting little tidbits, I think, in that conversation, just about
they
Minbari
don't
culture.
actually have any like gods or god that they worship, or I mean, they always talk about
Villain.
Is it Villain?
Yeah. Well, that was the part that stuck out to me, is when they talk about Villain, they say Villain was Minbari, but not born of Minbari, who created the Grey Council.
And then she like stops Lanier from saying anymore. It's getting too. They don't need to know all the details.
One step at a time. One step at a time, Lanier.
Yeah. Well, I did think it was interesting. Like they talked about the souls thing, which we know about before because of season 1. Which makes me think maybe Sheridan was, or not Sheridan, Sinclair was maybe Villain, because that's their like important soul. Because it is basically a reincarnation. Like their bodies are a vessel for a soul that is projecting onto them.
Well,
and those souls are shared with humans also.
But when they brought this up in the first place, back in the Soul Hunter episode, I got the impression that it wasn't like a direct one-to-one where one soul is reincarnated into a new body. They talked about it as if all the souls went back to like the same. They're part of a whole, and they're all like combined in like a sort of source. So I didn't necessarily take it as the exact same soul comes out again and goes into a new body. Like I was almost like, in the same way that we talk about like when people are buried and you go back into the earth and your atoms are all become part of the system again, and you know.
Yeah. Or like the Scientology or something where the humans are just vessels of, I think it's like kind of similar, of
I think
alien souls.
I think I find the Minbari culture a bit more
easier
believable.
to swallow.
Yeah, it's a bit easier to swallow. Yeah, than Scientology.
No, I did actually find this really interesting. Just a neat religion that's made for the show, but it's I thought that Sinclair, like the reason they stopped the war was not just because humans were capable of having the same souls the Minbari have, but also that he was special because he had like some important soul. Maybe not in that episode, but another one that was brought up. Oh, maybe I'm misremembering. Yeah, I'm good at that.
I mean, this theory may be right, but I don't think they ever outright said or implied specifically that the villain was inside Sinclair. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I thought it was just somebody important.
Like Gary Busey.
Well, I think it was. I was thinking before that maybe it was Ducat, but who was like a big part of season 1.
I'm just imagining Gary Busey with the bone head. Like,
there's not enough teeth in Sinclair for Gary Busey.
It is the future.
Would be rejected.
It is the future. So Gary Busey did die a long time ago, right? We're in 2260, right?
Not enough crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I think this is cool, and I think it's the way Lanier describes what's happening of like they believe the soul like is kind of like a light that's shining on the wall. Now the light isn't inside, like the wall isn't emanating the light. It's not coming from it's coming from another source, so it's like a projection. I thought that kind of...
So there's like a central soul like battery where all the souls are, but they're just sort of being projected into the bodies that are...
Yes. And then we get the scene at the end with Kosh and Lita where there's sort of a transference of light also. So it kind of made me think of it.
We'll talk about that separate. Let's not jump to that. We finish this plot first.
I mean, I thought they were connected somehow.
Oh, they may be, but we'll get to that. That's a whole separate kettle of fish. That 10-second scene is opening so many cans of worms.
Yeah.
To stick on the main plot though, we have this idea that this has happened. The reason why this Centauri telepath has unlocked these memories in Brad Dourif is because he was paid off to do so by some of the loved ones of the victims of this serial killer, and they all come to get him. And it kind of mirrors you. He talks about how the big part of his faith that he talks about is Jesus waiting when he could have like fled the night before his crucifixion. It's like, would he have the courage to wait like him? And he sort of sees it as he did because he waited for the lynch mob.
And then they crucify him.
Yeah. Because Sheridan and Garibaldi piece some of this together, and they question the Centauri. And they use Lita here because the Centauri telepath's like, hey, and you can't like use a telepathy out me because your psycho has rules. He's like, well, it's just so funny. We've got a surprise on that front. And they put a black bag over his head so he can't, see Lita and like sort of shop her. And she comes in and just like does a... Do you know what this is? This is the telepath equivalent of in like a cop movie where the cop pulls out the phone book and starts hitting the perp to make them talk.
Yeah.
This is the brutal interrogation where they're roughing them up.
Yeah, we're bringing the bad cop.
Lita couldn't start solving these crimes until she handed in her badge.
I mean, she knocks him out.
She does, yeah.
And is able to get information from him after he's knocked out.
Yeah. Of course, they go find him, and he's already kind of dying, and he kind of sort of, and the main monk kind of says, no, like, I like forgive you of your sins or whatever, the exact phrasing is, and says, no, you can still ask for forgiveness. There is still, and it's this kind of interesting thing of like, when you think of like movies like Total Recall, which has like a personality replaced, and like, are you the person that was there originally, or are you the new one that's maybe a better person now that you've lived as a better person, and you maybe can see how much of an asshole you were before? And that's putting it lightly in this case because he was a serial killer, but like that perspective, like what does that do to you, and how do you like understand the wrongs that you had at that time? It's a very interesting concept that honestly like could be an arc. It could be much bigger than a single episode.
Oh yeah, totally.
If anything, the execution of like maybe telegraphing it a little bit too much is my main problem, but maybe the other problem is just that I think there's so much more meat on this idea that it could have been something that they see. I actually think this character sticking around knowing that he used to be a serial killer but still trying to be good now with that knowledge is actually really interesting.
Well, good news, because one day you'll watch Voyager. I'm telling you, he plays the same character.
I walked into that, didn't I? Well, this was before Voyager, I think.
I think so, yeah. I think that's right.
Yes.
Although it's early Voyager that he shows up.
No, early Voyager might have started. Yeah, because Voyager started the year after Next Gen finished, right?
I think so.
Because I don't think Deep Space Nine was ever on its own. So I think, honestly, this might be the same year that Voyager started.
It's so funny.
So it's pretty close. It'll be pretty close.
Yeah, he's in 3 episodes of Voyager, and they're like some of the best ones because it's just so interesting to have like he plays a serial killer. It's just so interesting that like Starfleet would have a serial killer in it and stuff, and he like mind melds with the Vulcan, and then the Vulcan starts having like thoughts, and it's just this crazy. I don't know. It's a really cool arc for Voyager, especially because
it's not as good.
I mean, they have some great episodes, but like for the most part, the show, with a couple exceptions of characters, like it's not the greatest. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the other thing that happens at the end of this, though, is that the sort of the main guy who's like leading up this mob who wants to kill him. I will say, unfortunately, this guest actor's not that good. That's maybe the other
he's
sort
alright.
it's the other thing that's a negative about the episode. It's more just a sort of direct, not a technical thing, but just an objective. He's not that good. But they catch him, and Sheridan, like at one point, Zach has to actually hold Sheridan back because he's ready to just start decking this guy because he's been a prick. And
Well, he also like tortured and murdered somebody.
Well, yeah, that's what he's been a prick about, though. He's saying that he's proud about it. And Sheridan has sort of a conflicted relationship with Brad Dourif. I mean, it's not a super deep one, but he bonded with him a little bit. He complimented his little sculpture thing, and he wanted.
Did you see what it was? I couldn't figure it out.
I thought it was giving me Unicorn from like Blade Runner vibes. I was getting.
I thought maybe it was like a model of a ship or something else. I don't know. It looked like a piece of plastic.
Yeah. Just let the imagination take it and just assume it's pretty.
Sheridan loved it.
Yeah, Sheridan was into it.
He's going to put it right on his fridge.
So they catch this guy, and after everything goes down, Sheridan's talking to the head monk, and they're talking about forgiveness and how much of a complicated sort of feeling this is. And if anything, if a character should have had this conversation, it should have really been Garibaldi, given how much he was like, because he brought up how he felt about all this early in the episode.
Yeah.
But Sheridan
in justice.
talks about where does the line between justice and vengeance like begin and end, and forgiveness, and these concepts. And then just as he's sort of making this point, which is very kind of forward thinking, and he's talking about how we have to try and be better, in walks the guy who is responsible for the death of Brad Dourif, but he's now clean cut. He's wearing a robe. He's been sent back to the monastery to train to be a monk.
Yeah, that happened fast.
Yeah, which
I
I guess
didn't think that it would be so instant.
I mean, I guess like arguably there should be more time for the trial, but the actual process of wiping the mind seems to be like a day from the last time we've seen it done. So,
yeah, I guess that's true. I think this is interesting, especially since the religion of Brad Dourif in the show is just straight up Christianity, and Christianity has that forgiveness side of their religion where they will take anyone, like anybody, so long as they ask for forgiveness and accept like Christ into their heart. I know this because I had this thing where I went through where I grew up without religion, and like my religious friends were like, well, you should come with us and go to our youth groups and stuff like that. It'll be fun. And then we went to like this thing where it was like all these youth groups were together. This Christian, it was called like a harvest festival. It sounds very midsummer, but it was really fun. They had like bands and like a half pipe, and everyone's doing tricks. It's all very cool, but like Jesus cool. and then at the end of it, there was like this speaker who was really intense and like really getting the crowd revved up. And I mean, he was basically just saying like, we love you. Like anybody who accepts Jesus into their hearts is a good person, no matter what your past is. And I couldn't help but be like, well, like I don't like, there's no way that if God exists, that he would accept like a murderer or like a rapist over me, a genuinely good person who does good things for people, but just because I don't have Jesus in my heart. But that's just the way that their religion works. So like seeing
it's a hypocrisy,
this play
is what you're
out,
telling me. God's just a chump. He's like, I'll forgive anything.
That was the night I became an atheist.
As long as you worship me, I'll forgive anything you've ever done, because it's
seriously,
it's basically nepotism,
episode,
right? It's humanity nepotism. Nepotism.
It's like it's just people who want to be a part of something, who are outcasts, can feel welcomed and embraced, no matter their past. Like, this is the thing, like, just so long as you've come here, we'll come to Jesus, you're accepted. And I mean, this sort of plays out in this episode too. Like that experience I had was very much portrayed in this, and the fact that they took anybody.
I think, yeah, but I think you telling that story puts a negative spin on it, and I think the episode gives it more of a positive outlook, because
I mean, Sheridan didn't seem to think so at the end.
Well, no,
he's conflicted by it.
He's conflicted, but I mean, his reaction is the best moment of the whole episode. The look in his face as he's trying.
Yeah, that's why I really like the ending, honestly.
Right, but like he sees him. He obviously is holding back a lot of emotion. He doesn't want to shake his hand, and the head monk's like, "Look, you were just saying, weren't you, about how we have to try and forgiveness and moving forward and blah 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 blah." And he's like, yes, I was. And he sort of like, makes an effort and shakes his hand and wishes him the best of luck, even though obviously he's conflicted about it. And I think this was kind of an idea of like, regardless of your feeling on religion, the message I got from this was that not everything, even if you are atheist or you're of another religion or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not good ideas to take from each religion, that they don't have good like concepts. And I think the idea of someone being able to realize what they've done is wrong and ask forgiveness. Now, obviously, this guy doesn't. But that's the beauty of this episode, is that the main character that we were following, Brad Dourif's character, did learn what he did and still wanted for forgiveness. And that's where you get into this kind of interesting. And we still have that debate, of course, like, is this still moral? Because he's not asking for forgiveness knowing who he is or what he did. And because we know fine well, he did not want forgiveness before this. He was ecstatic that he'd pulled this off. He was like, he deserved to die. I've been waiting to do this. I am thrilled that I killed this bastard. That's his attitude.
It's a little like Clockwork Orange, right? Like, is it really reformation if you're just...
Yes, Clockwork has the perfect comparison. Yes.
Yeah, is it really like reformation if it's something that is not really you anymore?
Give Tara
a brainwashed
bowler hat. She's earned a bowler hat.
What does that mean? Is that an inside joke?
No, Clockwork Orange. They wear bowler hats.
Oh, okay. Go to the milk bar.
Bet the old ultra violence.
Listen to some Ludwig van.
No, Clockwork Orange is the best comparison, actually, and which is interesting, because I do think this has kind of maybe like a slightly more positive touch by the end, which is Sheridan because Sheridan making this effort at the end is him acknowledging that while there's still clearly a problem with how they're doing it here, he still ultimately agrees that there has to be something forward other than just revenge and eye for an eye and those ideas. It has to be more than that. So I do think this has a slightly less completely satirical approach that Clockwork Orange obviously does, which is completely harsh and like volatile and in your face and horrendous.
Yeah, the Brad Dourif stuff seems to be like the positive spin, like, although it is pretty dark when he's acknowledging like, I thought I was a good person and I have this horrible past. I don't know which one is the real me anymore. Like, that is a pretty dark thing to have to go through. But he has this, this arc of like wanting to be like Christ-like and becoming Christ-like, like literally at the end.
There's a lot of talk as well in the episode about how Jesus died for sins, right? Which is, something that Christianity loves to go on about. Jesus died for all our sins, blah, blah, blah. But he in this episode, like, as he's dying, like, it was very clear, this idea that he is dying for his own sins and he understands what those sins are. But I think there's an argument to be said that he would never be able to have this moment or realize or understand the sins that he had committed if they hadn't given him like a clean slate to actually be a better person first, to understand like, because you can't take a serial killer who is this far gone, typically anyway. I'm sure there's some examples of serial killers who have been model prisoners and have been very nice in prison.
Serial killers, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying, like Bundy. People really liked Bundy.
Not Bundy. I'm just. I'm putting that out there just so some asshole in the comments can't say no. It's happened a bunch of times. Blah, blah, blah. Right? I'm covering my own ass. Okay.
Got it.
Give me peace. I'm quite happy to just assume most serial killers are a bunch of dickbags. Okay. So there is this interesting thing where you don't know if someone can actually get to the point where they can ask for forgiveness sincerely, unless you actually are able to strip away all of their bad tendencies first, which is what the technology in this show allows them to do. Obviously, they don't intend for them to realize what they've done later. This is like a one-off because some telepath unlocked it. But it does beg a lot of interesting questions. And there's like, well, it's quite dark that they could do this to people, but at the same time, is there more use out of that person if they are doing good things for everyone else for the rest of their life?
Go ahead.
No, on you go.
I mean, if there, it does like ask a lot of questions too about what psychics or I always get their name wrong. What telepaths are able to do. I mean, can they just put empathy into people who just don't seem to have it? And would that be ethical? So they're still the same person, but they realize the wrong of what they've done? Like, does it have to be this whole witness protection thing but for convicts, where they all are basically have this like Black Mirror punishment of being completely mind wiped and live a life of servitude?
I don't know if I don't get the impression they can just make you feel a feeling necessarily. I mean they can clearly make you feel pain or something like that, but I don't know if they can make you feel empathy. I don't know if they can put that in. If you remember when we saw this being performed, and Talia was the appointed person to like be there for this, because it wasn't just her, there was a machine as well. It wasn't just a telepath does this on their own. There is technology, and there's like a big
that's true,
MRI machine looking thing that is also being used. So I don't know how much of the process is being done by that. Like, I'm not sure, but that's kind of like, you know, like nitty gritty technicality kind of
things that I thought. I mean, this episode is very much like, asking the big questions of, is this ethical? Is this a good way to treat, people so that they don't have to live a life in prison? They can basically have a second chance, but they're limited to what they can do.
I don't really have an answer if it's better or worse. I think there's definitely some pros to this method. You're making someone useful. You're not just killing someone. So, I mean, that's something. But, of course, you are technically killing a person in the sense that if you're wiping everything from who they are...
you kind of are, right? Like...
Yeah. But...
I mean, one of the last lines our new monk says is that, like, ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to do this, to be here. I'm like, okay, well, that was like a day ago.
Yeah, that's based on a lie, but...
Right.
But the real question, though, that I think comes from that is, well, you give this person a chance to do good, but it's not so much for them, it's about the good they're doing for other people. And it's what the main monk even says to Durif when he's trying to convince him to, like, not go through with it and stupid. He's like, no, think of all the good things you've done for other people. Think of all the good that your comfort you've brought to others and things like that. Like, is it worth what they've done to him for all the good that then can be spread to others? And if his good attitude that he now has in this new persona encourages good in other people, is that not ultimately just a good thing? And this episode doesn't necessarily have a good answer for you. I don't think it's meant to have like a clear, distinct answer. The moment that's the whole point with Sheridan, is that ultimately he accepts that, yeah, we have to be better than just an eye for an eye. There has to be like another path that actually takes steps forward, that actually offers a chance of forgiveness. Of course, the asterisk on all of this is that it's not really true forgiveness if the person can't actually remember or be forgiven or grow and improve from it. They're just being reset from it.
Yeah.
But how many times? But how many times would that work? I mean, in the real world, how often does that work? The actual person
Plus, if
growing
it
and
is,
being
like,
rehabilitated and so on. Like, it doesn't most of the time, sadly. So,
and even in this sense, like, I mean, if like Gacy and Bundy were just walking around as, you know, custodians or something for, I don't want to say a school, but
that would be a
like
bold choice. That would be a bold choice to put them into a school, but yes.
Right. But like, they're totally different people. Their minds are wiped. Like, they're still pretty famous looking. Like, if Charles Manson was walking around, I might be like, hey, that guy looks like Charles Manson, or or maybe it is him. You know? So
well, that's actually something I noticed, is that when Garibaldi was watching the news, they made a point of not showing the killer.
oh, okay, I didn't notice that. But like, when he's looking up, when Dorff is looking up himself,
No,
like,
he does.
there's a ton of footage of him.
He does
in,
find
like, on
himself,
news.
but I wonder if that's actually because of this punishment that gets put in place, if they intentionally don't just plaster their face all over the news in the same way that the media does nowadays. Like, I wonder if that's like an intentional...
Well, the media's gotten a lot better about that.
Yeah.
Like, when they talk about mass shootings now, which unfortunately is often, they don't talk about the shooter. They don't show their face anymore. They don't talk about the names. They refer to them as the shooter, and they talk about the victims.
Yeah, I wonder if that's an intentional choice that's made in this world, because they know they're going to be like essentially relocating them. But I mean, clearly they are sending them off to fairly going off to a monastery is a pretty remote location.
Yeah, like in the searching the galaxy for alien gods, like, yeah, that's pretty remote.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the guy did say, we've been searching for you for 9 years.
So it's a lot of interesting concepts at play. I think obviously this episode has given us a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of really cool sci-fi concepts and a lot of things that actually relate to ethics and morals and even religious concepts and just theology in general. I will say though, the execution of the episode's a little bit weaker than I would like, because it does telegraph it a little bit too much. Dodgy guest star towards the end. Which is a shame, given that character's few scenes are really important. You know, because
and he might be recurring.
No, because they say he's going off to the monastery at the end to train.
Oh, I thought he was like staying
Nah,
with
he's not staying.
Our head monk guy.
He has to go and train to be peaceful and monk-like.
Okay, if he was recurring, then I would have wanted the rules to be reversed. Like, okay, bring Brad Dourif back.
Yes. Nah, he's going off to the monastery. But because of that, I think that is a bit of a shame that does.
All right, let's talk about Lita.
Yeah, Lita. So Lita shows up at the start. Franklin.
In the Vorlon ship.
Yes, in a Vorlon ship. Franklin, and we know that she obviously was trying to get to the Vorlon homeworld. She tells her story about how she was basically asked her, like, a ride to just leave her in a pod at the edge of Vorlon space, and like almost died, and then just woke up in the Vorlon homeworld, and then she says, I can't tell you anything about it because I'm not allowed to.
Yeah, Franklin's like, well, come on, what'd you see?
But Franklin also does some examinations on her, and everything that she had... I mean, she didn't have anything serious wrong, but she did have a few medical things that were in her records that all seem to be gone. Like, they're all fixed. I think her appendix was a little bigger or something like that, and now it's normal sized. I think they said she had another little condition. Well, again, not a big, huge deal.
He basically says, like, this isn't something that should happen. You've experienced a miracle. Yeah, which, given the themes of the episode, is, I don't know, it works.
You're back to being, or not even back to. I mean, for all we know, she never was this, but she's effectively now the peak physical health of a human being of her age.
Or she's a body double. Wouldn't that be funny? She's like the Vorlons are just a bunch of body snatchers.
If that turns out to be true, or in the off chance that there's some truth to what you just said, I'm not going to make fun of it, but I want to.
Well, that's the thing. You just throw out ideas, and some of them will stick. Like, they'll come back.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe she's been like reborn. I mean, he's saying like she's different.
I mean,
when she comes out of the Vorlon ship, it's like a birth.
The only scenes to really talk about with her, really that we don't mention, because obviously we mentioned the interrogation, if you want to call it that, is the scene with Londo, which is that Londo also wants to know about the Vorlon homeworld, and acts all buddy with her, like, oh, I was just thinking of my good friend Lita the other day.
As I live and breathe.
Yeah, he's full on, schmozzing mode.
Yeah, she's
and
not
then
having it.
when she turns him down, he gets kind of threatening. He even says, "Hey, I hear Psycho is looking for you. It'd be a shame if someone leaked that information, wouldn't it?" And that's when she threatens him with, I would give you a nightmare, or when she does it all in third person, like it's all hypothetical. If someone were to threaten that to a telepath, that telepath could find that, I could find that person, and they'd have a nightmare every night for the rest of their life. They'd be screaming forever. And I thought this was particularly a notable little thing because he already kind of has that. We know he's been having nightmares, so I thought that was
he's not threatened by nightmares.
Yeah. He is a little threatened. I think that's kind of the point of his reaction, though. I mean, he cracks a joke saying, "Oh, well, would I even notice the difference?" But I think that's why it kind of gets to him, because he's already experiencing that, and that's why it's like a scary threat. The idea that like he could even be have less sleep and be more like plagued with guilt and all that kind of thing is, so that shuts him right up. Shuts him right up. But then the other scene,
and it lets us know that she is no longer like following the rules of Psychor anymore.
Yes, she's a rogue psychop.
Very useful, it turns out.
Very, very useful. Which is an interesting weapon for them to have in their disposal. Our group of heroes to have a telepath who is willing to do just some quick little grabs here.
Yeah, willing to bend the ethics.
Little psych attack there, so on and so on. The other thing though is that the very final scene of the episode is that because we see her leaving, like as if she's leaving with Ivanova, and Ivanova like cleared out the port, as it were, so that no one sees her. But we sort of flash back presumably to when she was with Kosh, and Kosh's helmet's like sitting on the table, and I'm like, oh, he's got his helmet off. And we go up and we just sort of see the light coming from the neck of the suit, and it's like 3 strands of light that are going into Lita's eyes or mouth, or vice versa. Actually, they're coming from.
Yeah, it's not. It's coming out of her.
Yeah, I think it's not until you get to the end of it where you see it come away from like the side that it's coming from, where you sort of really see that.
Oh, you see it at the start also, because I watched it twice to make sure. Yeah.
No, fair enough.
So yeah, you see the light come out of her and go into Kosh.
But I mean, there's a lot to ask here. There's a lot. I mean, the way I read it, at least my instinct is that whatever she's experienced that he wants to know about, he's just extracting it. This is just him.
This is how he takes information.
This is just and it's not like an evil thing or anything. I think she's willingly just given over whatever she's learned. Maybe this is like stuff from the Vorlon homeworld that she's passing on, rather than stuff that she's went through in Babylon 5. This might just be, here's all the information that your fellow Vorlons pumped me full of, and take it back, kind of thing.
Yeah, they use light to transfer information, perhaps.
Yeah. And it was just stored in her. And maybe you can only store it in a telepath because of how their mind works or something. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, the Vorlons are very telepathic.
Yes.
Maybe they only speak telepathically. Who knows? But I was thinking very much of what Delenn and Lanier were talking about when it comes to their religions and what they believe the soul is, and there is a transference of much like light. They use light as to describe it. So I was thinking, well, I mean, they are very close to the Vorlons. Like maybe their religion is based around them. And maybe there is some sort of transference going on of soul. Like maybe there's a bit of Kosh that goes into Lita when she goes on her, exploration that he takes back when she's there. I don't know.
You mean like like she needed like a key card effectively to get into the to give her passage into the Vorlon homeworld. She needs something encoded in her DNA or soul,
something like that. I mean, I'm sure
to
there's...
get in, and that.
Yeah.
And so Kosh gave her something, because we saw her obviously. We saw them meet before she left, right? We saw the light, and her looking happy. We saw that last time, and then maybe when she comes back from the Vorlon homeworld, she's like, okay, you can have your light back.
Right. Well, when she's dying in the pod, she says the last thing she saw was the Vorlon ship. So a Vorlon came and rescued her and brought her to the planet.
Yes.
So there could have been some transference there, or this is just like, I mean, maybe that's why she's healing, is because of some sort of transference happening of the soul, or whatever Kosh is, which could be interpreted as soul.
I don't know if it's literally a soul. I think obviously we're jumping to that word just because the
I'm using it
Minbari
because that's what the Minbari use. Yeah.
But there's not necessarily any link to say that for sure that's exactly what this is. Like,
yeah,
you know, especially
soul, conscience, whatever.
If we're but I don't necessarily think any part of Lita is leaving her. If you know, I don't think that's happening here.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's more like, I was thinking maybe it was like just Kosh projecting a bit of himself, whatever.
Yeah, to go back
whatever
to
this is, because it's not just light; it's like a tentacle-looking thing, like it's squiggly, like there's something there.
Yeah, but to go back to it's just like a password effectively to get into Vorlon space, right? It's like a signal for them.
Maybe she's going to collect information for Kosh also. Like she's working directly for him, so she's kind of like his eyes.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, they could have given her more when she was... I mean, that was the very first thing I said, is that this is just information that he's taking from her that she's got for him. But... Because you're the one that suggested that he put something in her first that he's taking back, which is why I could put up the keycard thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like we know that Kosh takes on whatever people want to see, or they see nothing. So he is some sort of like light. That's basically all we know, that can take physical form, but only to the people who want to see it. It's or the people he chooses to let see, and they all see something different.
Well, forget all that for a minute. Just talk about the fact that he is effectively made of light. What did Delenn...
And there is some sort of light transference, so...
No, forget the transference. Right. What did Delenn and Lanier say about the souls this episode? They talked about how the light's not on the wall. It's just being seen on the wall because it's coming from somewhere else. And if the Vorlon look to us like light, then I would suggest that they either are the similar in a more literal sense, like maybe like, okay, that's how the Minbari see their essence and like their religion, like views their existence. But what if the Vorlon are more literal in that sense, in that okay, we see the light and we see the shape of an angel, or that's what Sheridan sees and the others see other things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the light's coming from what they're seeing. It just means that that's where it's landing, and it's what you're... So I guess what I'm getting at is that this idea of perception and the idea of like what the source of the light is maybe the important question that we're not really looking at yet.
Yeah. I mean, because Londo saw nothing, so it has to be some sort of projected image then that he can choose. Kosh can choose who gets to see it and what they see.
Is it an active choice he's making in the moment, or is it more about...
I guess we don't have enough information yet, but...
Because I wouldn't have guessed so. I would have guessed the reason why he couldn't see is because of the other things he's done, and because he's like he's basically tainted.
He's being drawn to the dark.
He's tainted by shadows, which happens to be the opposite of light. Just thematically to throw that in there, it's literally the opposite of light.
Yes.
Well, I guess darkness is the opposite of light, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the natural, opposing idea. Anyway, a lot of interesting things to talk about. This, breaking down exactly what's going on with Lita now working, and she says she'll be back. She's stationed in B5, but she's going to be coming and going, which is basically a nice way of saying she'll be popping up from every few episodes or so, but she's not going to be here every episode.
Yeah, is she in the main credits?
No,
she's still a guest star.
No, But our British dude, who's not been back since episode 1 or 2, I think. Not 1. There was 1.
1.
He's not been back since episode 1. This is episode 4. So.
And we get our security guard back. He's in the main credits.
Actually, do you know what I noticed? I noticed this in the first episode, but I forgot to bring it up. Is that Londo and Jakar got swapped at the end of the credits. It used to be with Jakar's actor, Andreas Katsoulis, and it would say with him,
end on Peter
and then
Drax,
but now it's switched to the other way around. I don't know why, but I just something I noticed.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I also meant to bring it up and forgot.
It's not like a big deal, but for some reason they got switched.
Well, the way we feel about them has switched.
Do you think it's that simple that
they end with the big one.
GMS is just like, no, I'm going to use the opening titles to hint at how the audience feel about this thing. I don't know. I did kind of like that Kosh actually like contacts Ivanova and doesn't really have much to say to her. He's just like, this is a formality to let you know that, we've brought someone here, and then that's when Lita walks out. It's just because I'm so used to like Kosh only interacting with either Sheridan or Delenn or now
the
Lita,
guy
I guess.
who has like with the exposed brains under his hat.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see Kosh be a bit more open to communicating with Ivanova. Maybe we'll see him talk to Garibaldi at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, and she has that moment where she's like excited to see the Vorlon ship again, because we know that she goes down there sometimes just to look at it.
She's like ooh and and
maybe that's why Kosh is feeling like, I don't know, open to having her hang around and see what happens next.
I want a ship like that.
You're still working on that, huh?
I don't think I'm working on it. I think it's just a great joke, a running gag that can come up from time to time. That's what they call Ivanova. When she sees something she knows she wants, she definitely knows it.
Smooth.
All right, there you go. That's episode 4 of season 3. Hopefully you enjoyed this.
Kind of lengthy, huh?
That was kind of a lengthy talking about the ideas of the episode, which might be completely off base in some ways as to where it's going to go with some of them. But regardless, I think the conversations themselves are interesting. So that's what good science fiction will often do. So let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All that stuff is super important on YouTube. It helps out YouTube channels a lot. That's why they all tell you to do it. So please hit the buttons. But you can also, of course, support us over in Patreon, can't you, Tara?
That's right. If you enjoy our conversation and our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildfuzzTV. And if you donate those $1 per month, you'll get bonus episodes for other shows we do. And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get access to these Babylon 5 reviews 1 week early. So you can be ahead of everybody else and comment first and like first and all that stuff. Tell us your thoughts first, because we love your conversations.
You can also check out Male Fuzz Movies, which is the other YouTube channel we have, which is movie review stuff. Specifically, myself and Tara have a science fiction movie podcast on there called The Atomic Cinema Experiment. And we talk about sci-fi movies. We just had a vote for the top 50 sci-fi movies, which is a little bit of a different to most episodes are just we watch the movie and we talk about it, kind of like we do with Babylon 5. But we're about to do Blade Runner 2049, or that's already been up by the time this goes up. I'm not sure. Time's a weird, funny thing, but might be worth checking that out if you're into sci-fi movies. But hey,
yeah, totally. The list was really fun. The top 50 sci-fi movies submitted by you guys.
And Tara got really drunk in the second half of that, so
I did. I'm not proud. So when we don't have to watch or thoroughly discuss something, then I can like relax. I made some pasta, I had some wine.
Yeah.
And then I had more wine during our discussion.
By the time we got to the top 10, like the movies were barely talked about. It was mostly just tangenting into weird territory.
good tangents. I QA'd that episode today and it was good. I enjoyed it. Okay. I giggled.
I'll take your word for it. So check it out. That should have premiered yesterday by the time. Well, If you're actually about a week ago when this goes public, but if you're on Patreon, listen to this early. That should have premiered yesterday or 2 days ago, even. So yeah, there you go. That's the show. That's Babylon 5, Season 3, Episode 4. Thank you very much for joining us once again. We always appreciate it. Keep watching in Babylon 5. Just don't give away the home world.